this next dish, the whole wheat pasta with greens and beans, I'm going to show you how to cook whole wheat pasta, which, was one of the first pastas out there that wasn't just a traditional white flour pasta, but I think it kind of got a bad rap because it does have quite a strong flavor. So I'll go through how to cook it, but also just want to highlight throughout this recipe some flavors that go well with this type of pasta. So first we have our water boiling. We'll bring it to a rolling boil. And then there's about a gallon of water. We're going to cook about a pound of pasta, so we'll put about a tablespoon of salt in for that gallon, which of course is optional, but it really does help to bring out the flavor of the pasta. And then it doesn't matter what shape you use for this. It is something that tends to get served family style, so it's nice to have a pasta that you can easily scoop up with a spoon, since everything else would be easy to grab that way, and having long noodles can be messy. You need to bring your pot back up to a boil. You can put the lid back on. I'm not going to give you the exact time for this one because every type of pasta varies, so I'd really encourage you to use the guideline time on the package. And so this one says about 8 minutes, so we'll aim for that and we'll start testing around that time. But while we wait for that to happen, I just want to highlight some of the ingredients here. So we have some really nice bitter greens. We have some collard greens for variety. We've used kale in some other recipes in the course, but we'll add that here because there wasn't quite enough greens and the bunch of collard greens that I got to kind of be a good balance for this amount of pasta. And so the bitterness of those greens will detract a little bit from the strong flavor of the pasta, and then we'll also make sure to season it really well at the end. So this is one of those recipes where you really can't go by exactly to the letter the amount of the seasoning ingredients at the end, like the lemon and the salt and the red pepper. And if you want to add any herbs, you really just want to keep tasting and adjusting until it's exactly right, because depending on the bitterness of the greens or the particular type of pasta that you get, it's really going to vary how much you need. All right, so our pasta is coming back to a boil here. And what's really nice about this dish is that it is a one-pot meal. So I'm going to boil my pasta in the last few minutes of cooking, say the last 3 to 5 minutes. I think I did taste our greens. They're not super bitter today, so we'll aim for 3 minutes of cooking at the end. So when I have about 3 minutes left on my pasta, I'll just toss the greens in here and then we'll drain it all together. And then while that's draining, we'll use the same pot to saute all of our other ingredients. All right, so we have our whole wheat pasta about 2/3 of the way cooked at a rolling boil. There's about 3 minutes or so left, so I'm just going to take some collard greens that are cut up into what will be, when it's cooked down, bite-sized pieces, so 1 to 2 inch pieces. Then we'll also put some kale in. I want to get some tongs and press that down under the water. For anyone that's not used to cooking greens, it looks like we're adding an enormous amount here, and it actually cooks down quite a bit. So you really want to add a lot more than you think if you want to have a nice balance between the pasta and the greens. And what I wish is that we could keep this nice vibrant green color. I mean, there's not a brighter green color, right? But it does not stay quite as bright as that, unfortunately. Okay, so we're going to bring this back to a boil and come back in a few minutes when we're ready to drain. So this has come back to a boil, and we've been cooking the greens for about 3 minutes now. Just going to test the pasta. And get as much of that water off as you can. It can be really hot, or grab it with a fork or something if you're afraid you're going to burn your hands. So our pasta is perfectly al dente. And if you end up cooking a little longer with the greens, it's okay. These greens are ones that are used to cooking. The reason that I like to do the greens in the pasta water instead of cooking them separately is that you're getting some of that nutrition absorbed into the pasta as well, instead of just dumping it all out. Some of it will go down the drain in the pasta water, but we're actually going to reserve a little bit of this pasta water when I drain it, and that will be part of the sauce. So I'm going to drain this, keep a little bit of the water, and we'll be right back to finish up the recipe. Okay. Before we go to saute the ingredients that will go in the pasta, I just wanted to show these collard greens whole. So I definitely refer you to the knife skills portion of the course to see how we take out the ribs. So these were cooked without this piece called the rib here that you can see in a lighter color. So that's really firm and chewy, and for quick cooking like we've done in this recipe, it wouldn't be enough to break down the fiber in there, and so it would be little fibers getting stuck in your teeth, be chewy, it'd be really unpleasant. So I definitely encourage you to remove that. Same with the kale, there's a rib there that you want to remove. We're just using the leafy portion. So as promised, this is a one-pot meal, so I've just drained my pasta and tried to get all the little pieces of greens out, but I haven't washed it. I'm just going to heat this back up. And we'll pour a little olive oil in here. And then we're going to briefly saute some garlic. Just minced up. If you like a lot of garlic, this is where you can really amp up the amount in there. You don't have to use what's in the recipe. If you like more, I'm going to put a little bit of crushed red chilies in here. Use more if you like spice. I put a fair amount in here. This is a nice dish to make spicy because otherwise, there's some bitterness from the pasta being whole wheat. There's some bitterness from the greens. It's nice to have another element, that spicy element, to distract the tongue from just having multiple levels of bitterness. So before the garlic could burn, I added some drained white beans. For this, I'm just using low sodium or no sodium canned navy or small white beans. If all you can find is cannellini, which are bigger ones, you can use that. I like white beans because they're not as bitter as some of the other kinds of beans, and so they're going to add a nice creaminess to this, which is, again, a different element than you would get with the greens and the bitterness from the whole wheat pasta. So I have my drained pasta and greens. I'm just going to put that into our bean and olive oil mixture. And at this point, if you have it overheat, you want to go ahead and turn it off or turn it on low. I'll turn it off. And to finish up seasoning, you can also transfer this to a mixing bowl if you want, or a serving dish. I'm going to season it in here so that I could put it in a serving dish, and then it's one less thing to get dirty. And so to season, we're going to add a few things. We're going to add salt eventually, but as mentioned several other times in the course, is that we want to season with any acidic ingredient we're going to use first, because that will help reduce the amount of salt we feel like we need to bring out the flavor of the dish. So I have some lemon juice that's already squeezed. I'll put that in. It usually tastes a little more lemon than it will say. The amount in the recipe is really the minimum amount. And you want to use fresh lemon. This is not a place where you want to use that jarred lemon juice. It will definitely have not as fresh of a flavor. So what I'm doing when I squeeze the lemon is, you can see some little seeds in my hand there. I'm using my fingers almost as a sieve. So I'm squeezing the lemon over my fingers and catching the seeds in between my fingers and letting the juice go through. If you're not so confident in your ability to do this, you can also use like a little tea strainer or some other kind of actual sieve if you want. But again, it's just one more thing to wash. And so before I add any more, I'm going to taste it. The other thing we want to do is add, as I mentioned, we kept a little bit of that pasta cooking water, so I have that here. You can see it's cloudy water. The reason that it's cloudy is that there's some starch from the pasta that cooked, and that's going to help pull together any of the oil that's been put in the pan to saute our aromatics, and that will kind of make a light sauce. But once you add that, there's not so much oil in this that it makes that big of a difference, but if you are really trying to emulsify the oil in the dish and the pasta water, you want to just stir quickly when you add it. And if you taste it and you feel like it's not rich enough, you can always add a little bit more olive oil at this point. If it's bland, you want to add more lemon and more salt. If it's not spicy enough, you could add a little bit more chili. If you feel like it's not garlicky enough, you've obviously kind of gone past the point where you can saute more garlic, but you could always sprinkle a little garlic powder in there if you like. But cooking is all about just balancing out the flavors until you get it exactly the way you like. Let me just try a bit. Get some greens in there too. It's really tasty. I think it needs a little bit more lemon and a little bit of salt, and we're almost there. There's definitely a nice kick from the chilies, so I don't think I need any more there, but I do like it. If you're serving this as someone that likes things really mild, you might want to cut back a little bit on the chilies in the recipe. If it looks like I'm using a lot of lemon, the lemons I'm using just aren't very juicy. So it's kind of one of those things you also just have to, pay attention as you're cooking. How juicy is this lemon compared to the normal lemons that I use? If it's a little bit firm and, more fibrous and not so much juice, you might need to use more. If it's really, really juicy, you might not need to use as much. And then just to give it a nice little kick of lemon, the other thing I'm going to add is lemon zest. So again, we show this in the knife skills portion of the course, how to remove this outer yellow, bright colored layer of the lemon. What we're not getting is we're not getting the white. That's really bitter. We definitely don't want to add any more bitterness to this dish. But there's a sweet, bright lemon flavor that comes just from that yellow part, which we're going to add. Adding a little more salt. So when I'm adding salt, I'm just making sure that I can taste the flavor of the food all the way to the back of my tongue. If it feels like it doesn't quite get there or it's a little bland and you've kind of gotten the lemon as amped up as you want to have it, you don't want it any lemonier, then that's where you would add some salt. It's really tasty. I think we're ready there. And this is just a nice, rich, homey dish. Obviously very healthful with the fiber and the protein from those white beans, which just really kind of melts into the dish. It's actually quite hard to see them. And all the different flavors and layers of flavors that we've added have really worked to meld all this together so that, we're not getting this hit of bitterness that we would often get with, this many greens in a dish. It's really a nice way to have them. And this would be perfect for, a cold day or a rainy day. It would really, be a stick to your ribs kind of warming meal. I hope you enjoy it.